May 22, 2019, Darndale, North Dublin. 4 p.m, a clear afternoon. Jordan Davis, 22, strolls down a laneway off Marigold Road, pushing a pram with his 4-month-old son. It's a mundane, tender scene until a figure on a bicycle appears. The cyclist is clad in black, face shrouded by a hood and balaclava. He pulls a handgun. Shots explode in the quiet suburban air. Residents later recall hearing a rapid series of cracks near Our Lady Immaculate School. Davis is hit 3 times, chest, arm, head. He collapses beside the pram. The gunman pedals away fast on a red mountain bike, vanishing around a corner. In the chaos, a child playing nearby freezes in shock. Within seconds, Jordan Davis lies dying on the pavement, his infant son wailing in the pram. Neighbors race out of their homes at the sound of screams. It's broad daylight in a quiet Dublin suburb, yet a young father has just been executed. This brazen murder wasn't an isolated act. It was the second gangland shooting in less than 18 hours, part of a spiraling feud tearing through the Coolock area of Dublin. Less than a day earlier, Jordan's close friend had been found dead beside a burning car. The 2 murders would plunge North Dublin into one of its bloodiest underworld conflicts. To understand how it came to this, we need to rewind to where the feud began, with a drug debt paid in blood. It started with a debt. January 17, 2019, Swords, North County, Dublin. Zach Parker, 23, pulls his car out of the parking lot of a local gym on Applewood Close. It's evening. Parker has just finished a workout. As he turns onto the road, a gunman steps from the shadows and opens fire on the vehicle. Bullets rip through the driver's side window. Parker is hit multiple times. His car veers and stops, windshield spider-webbed with bullet holes. His passenger, a friend, is wounded but alive. Zach Parker dies slumped in the driver's seat. Garda arrive to a grim scene, shell casings on asphalt, shattered glass, a young man's lifeless body. Parker was known to them, a low-level drug dealer with a taste for the high life. He had prior convictions for cocaine dealing. In Dublin's Underworld, the 23-year-old Parker was considered an up-and-coming figure on the north side drug scene. He drove flashy cars and wore designer clothes, but that lifestyle was built on dangerous connections and debts. Word on the street was that Parker owed a substantial sum, nearly $200,000, to his suppliers, a gang tied to the Kinahan cartel. He'd taken a package of drugs on credit, and Garda had seized it in a raid, leaving Zach unable to repay the gang. The group he was indebted to was nicknamed the Gucci Gang, a clique of young gangsters known for their love of luxury brands and gaudy displays of wealth. They were led by a notorious fingerless gang boss called Mr. Flashy. For Zach Parker, failing to pay that debt was a death sentence. Investigators later suspected that Parker's own associates may have set him up to appease higher-ups in the cartel. In the cutthroat world of Dublin drug trade, loyalty is fickle. On that cold night in Swords, someone seemingly betrayed the young dealer. A friend in the passenger seat, a burst of gunfire, and Parker was gone. His murder sent shockwaves through the gangs of Coolock and beyond. One of those most shaken was Parker's close friend, Sean Little. Little was only 22, but already knee-deep in the drug business himself. He had grown up in Coolock and aligned with the Gucci gang hierarchy. In fact, Sean Little was an associate of Mr. Flashy. He moved in the same circles as Parker, rubbing shoulders with Kinahan cartel-linked figures. Parker wasn't just a business partner, Sean Little's friend, and now he was dead. After Parker's assassination, Sean Little was a man on edge. Those close to him say the young gangster was livid and heartbroken. Parker had been like a brother. Rumors swirled that Little wanted revenge, that he vowed to get the rats who killed Zach. In the underworld, even whispering about payback can put a target on your back. The Gucci gang leaders got wind that Little might seek vengeance for his friend. For 4 months, tensions simmered. Underneath the outward calm, betrayals were brewing. Unbeknownst to Little, some of the men he considered allies were already plotting his demise, just as they had Zach's. One was an older associate in their circle, Hamid Sanambar, a 41-year-old Iranian-born criminal. Sanambar had a reputation as a hired gun, someone who did dirty work for various gangs. He was friendly with Little, but that friendship may have been a cover. Garda intelligence later suggested that Sanambar secretly agreed to murder Sean Little for a fee. The order likely came from the Fingless gang, who feared Little's loyalty had wavered after Parker's death. May 21, 2019, near Balbriggan, North Dublin. Late night, Sean Little drives a black Opel Insignia along a rural backroad off the M1 motorway. It's a desolate spot called Rowan's Little, not far from the city but eerily quiet at midnight. Little believes he's headed to a meeting, perhaps with a trusted friend, to discuss the next move. Instead, he's heading into an ambush. What happens next is brutal. Sometime before 11:30 p.m., gunfire erupts in the darkness. Locals later report hearing a series of loud cracks echoing across the fields. Sean Little shot multiple times in the head and upper body. His killers drag him out of the Insignia and dump him by the roadside. Then they torch the car. At 11:20 p.m., Dublin Fire Brigade responds to calls of a vehicle on fire near Junction 5 of the M1. They arrive to find the Opel engulfed in flames. As firefighters douse the blaze, a chilling sight emerges in the flicker of blue lights. A young man's body lying on the ground, illuminated by the glow of the burning car. It's Sean Little. He has been executed, his corpse left next to the flaming wreck, a grim gangland message. The double cross was complete. The very people Little once allied with had eliminated him. Investigators suspect Hamid Sanambar and at least one other accomplice lured Little out under false pretenses and shot him at close range. One shot to the head, an efficient kill. They then burned his car, perhaps to destroy evidence or simply to sow dread. News of Sean Little's murder spread fast through Coolock. He was the second young man from the area killed in less than 6 months. The community reeled, 2 local 22-year-olds, both with known drug ties, now slain. And it wasn't over. The worst was yet to come, within hours. May 22, 2019, just 18 hours later. In the early afternoon, even before Sean Little's family can process the news, Jordan Davis learns that his friend Shah is dead. Jordan is also 22, from Coolock, a small-time dealer and new father. He and Little were pals. They ran in the same crew. Grieving and angry, Jordan posts a tribute on Facebook around 3:45 p.m. A photo of himself and Sean Little, together with the caption, "Rest in paradise, you were a gent." It's a public show of loyalty and sorrow, but it may have also been a dangerous signal to those behind Little's killing. Less than an hour later, Jordan Davis is out walking in Darndale, a neighboring estate. He pushes his baby son's pram down a familiar pedestrian shortcut, a narrow laneway beside Our Lady Immaculate National School. Suddenly, a lone cyclist approaches from behind, steadily closing in. Some witnesses later recall the bike was a distinctive orange mountain bike. The rider dismounts swiftly, pulls out a 9mm pistol, and unleashes a volley of shots at Jordan. Jordan Davis has no time to react. Bullets strike him in the back and torso. One round tears into his head, killing him instantly. The stroller rolls a short distance before bumping to a stop as Jordan collapses. The killer hops back on the bike and pedals off at top speed, disappearing into the warren of streets. It's a clean getaway in broad daylight. Chaos erupts in the laneway. A baby crying hysterically, bystanders rushing to help, calling emergency services. Paramedics and Garda swarm the scene within minutes, but there is little they can do. Jordan is pronounced dead at the scene, lying on the ground just yards from the school gates, a bright red bloodstain on the concrete. His infant son, miraculously unhurt, is scooped up by a horrified neighbor. Dublin's police now have 2 homicide investigations on their hands, 2 friends murdered less than a day apart. Officially, they urge caution. "We're not making a connection at this point in time," one Garda superintendent tells the media that evening. But everyone knows these killings are linked. The Underworld feud that began with Zach Parker's death is accelerating. Young men are being cut down one after another in a cycle of revenge. Jordan's execution was particularly chilling for its brazenness. A father shot dead while pushing a pram. It shocked even veteran crime reporters. The message was clear. Nobody, not even a new dad on a midday stroll, was safe from the reach of these gangs. Jordan had allegedly crossed someone, and he likely knew it. In fact, evidence later emerged that Davis had been threatened. Only weeks before, a rival dealer warned him, "I'm on your case, mate," and reportedly appeared on a gang tick list with a huge debt next to it. Whether it was his unpaid bills or simply his loyalty to Sean Little, Jordan was marked for death. His Facebook tribute to his fallen friend may have only sealed his fate, showing his enemies he hadn't backed down. With Jordan Davis's murder, the feud had reached a fever pitch. 2 high-profile shootings in less than a day put Coolock and Darndale on edge. Armed Garda patrols flooded the north side. The media dubbed it the Coolock feud, a deadly tit-for-tat conflict playing out in the suburbs of Dublin. And though the killings paused in the days immediately after, the bloodletting was not finished. 1 week later came a twist that reads like a movie script. Hamid Sanambar, the 41-year-old suspected triggerman in Sean Little killing, decided to show his face. On May 28, 2019, Sanambar attended the wake for Sean Little at the Little family home on Kilbarron Avenue, Coolock. Perhaps he thought no one suspected him. Perhaps, in the paranoid code of gangland, he wanted to see who was whispering about him. What he didn't know was that he was now a marked man. That afternoon, mourners milled in and around the Little residence, paying respects to Sean Little's grieving parents. Sanambar arrived to offer condolences, blending in among the crowd of friends and family. But vengeance was in the air. Some of Little's associates strongly suspected Hamid Sanambar had double-crossed his pal. They believed this Iranian enforcer was the one who pulled the trigger on Sean Little, all while pretending to be a friend. For them, Sanambar's brazen appearance at the wake was an insult and an opportunity. At around 3:30 p.m., as Hamid Sanambar stood in the front garden of the Little home, chaos erupted. A car screeched to a halt outside, a silver Toyota Avensis. 3 men jumped out, faces covered by balaclavas, guns drawn. Shouts of alarm rang out, but it was too late. The gunman opened fire on Sanambar right there in the driveway. Multiple shots hit him at close range. Panicked mourners dove for cover behind walls and hedges. In the span of seconds, the Iranian hitman collapsed to the ground, blood pooling on the concrete path where just days before crowds had gathered after Sean Little's murder. The assassins then sprinted back to their getaway car and sped off, tires screeching, leaving Hamid Sanambar dying at the scene. By the time Garda and paramedics arrived, the 41-year-old was beyond saving. Sanambar was pronounced dead in the same garden where he had been shaking hands moments earlier. He'd been shot multiple times, a swift execution. The hitman had himself been hit. In gangland law, it was almost poetic. The betrayer dispatched at the victim's own wake. Sanambar's killing was retaliatory justice in the eyes of Sean Little's crew. Unofficially, the word was that Little's father and friends had arranged the hit. Whether or not Stephen Little, Sean's father, was directly involved is unclear. But Garda sources feared that those close to Sean had orchestrated Hamid's demise. In doing so, they painted a new target on their backs. The cycle of vendetta was spinning even faster now. Every act of retribution invited another. Investigators later pieced together Sanambar's background. He was a known gun for hire, linked to multiple gangs, and even photographed alongside major cartel figures. He had arrived in Ireland years ago seeking asylum and stayed to build a criminal career. Now he lay dead, becoming the 4th murder victim in this feud since January. The feud was now roaring, 4 men slain in just over 4 months. Zach Parker, Sean Little, Jordan Davis, and Hamid Sanambar. Each killing was connected by a murky web of debt, betrayal, and reprisal. North Dublin hadn't seen carnage like this in years. And yet, unbelievably, there was still more blood to be spilled in 2019. By late 2019, the Coolock feud had fractured into a complex web of grudges. What began as one gang's internal purge now involved splinter groups and allies of allies. The violence was no longer neatly one side versus another, it had become a free-for-all of shaky loyalties. The murder of one young man in particular underscored just how chaotic the feud had become. November 24, 2019, Clonshaw Avenue, Coolock. Dusk is falling on a quiet Sunday. Owen Fishy Boylan, a 22-year-old local postman and small-time cocaine dealer, is gardening outside his home. Despite the cool weather, Owen is outside in his own front yard, perhaps believing danger has finally passed. He was friends with Zach Parker and part of that social circle, but months have gone by since the Bloody May shootings. Maybe he feels safe enough to let his guard down. If so, it's a fatal mistake. Around 5:15 p.m., a car pulls up and a gunman leaps out. Neighbors hear shouting, then gunshots. Boylan tries to flee through his garden, but he's caught out in the open. Bullets tear into him before he can reach cover. Within moments, Fishy Boylan lies bleeding to death among the hedges of his own yard. The shooter jumps back into the waiting vehicle, and they roar away into the evening traffic. Boylan's murder is yet another shock for Coolock. He becomes the fifth young man killed as part of this feud in 2019. Garda had actually warned Boylan months earlier that his life was in danger. He'd even survived a previous attempt on his life, but Ian didn't leave the area or go into hiding. He stayed in Coolock, and it cost him. The exact motive for his killing remains uncertain. In the tangled Underworld gossip, there are several theories. Some say Boylan was still seeking revenge for his friend Zach Parker's death, and the gang behind Parker's murder decided to silence Fishy before he could strike. Others whisper that Boylan knew too much about who set up Sean Little, or may even have been involved in Hamid Sanambar's assassination. If he helped kill the hitman, Mr. Flashy's gang would want him gone. Another theory, Boylan had made careless comments on Facebook about Sean Little's murder. Perhaps he gloated or pointed fingers publicly. That kind of talk can be lethal. It might have offended the wrong people, painting a bullseye on him. Whatever the reason, by the end of 2019, the Coolock feud had claimed 5 lives in rapid succession. The neighborhood's criminal landscape was littered with bodies of former friends and allies. A vacuum of power had formed. With so many key players dead, various factions scrambled to fill the void and control the lucrative drug trade in North Dublin. The feud that started over a single debt had now spiraled into a multi-sided turf war. As the feud's body count rose, law enforcement intensified its crackdown. The Garda Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau had been surveilling many of these gang members for months. Their goal was to prevent the next killing if they could. And indeed, they managed to intervene just as another hit was about to happen. On September 14, 2019, 2 men were driving through Dublin's north side when a fleet of unmarked Garda cars boxed them in. Officers armed with automatic weapons swarmed the vehicle and ordered the occupants out. They arrested 47-year-old Stephen Little, the father of the late Sean Little, and Edward MacDonald, 25, a known associate from Wexford. In the car, Garda found a chilling arsenal, a loaded semi-automatic pistol, 2 black balaclavas, gloves, 2 baseball bats, a can of petrol, and a long-handled lighter. It was a gangland hit kit, complete with tools to kill and then torch evidence. Under questioning, an enraged Stephen Little practically confessed his intent. He told the officers, "Had you given me another hour, I would have killed the bastard that killed him." The him in that sentence was his son, Sean. Stephen had become a vigilante father, hunting the people he believed murdered Sean. He was poised to exact his own revenge when the Garda's timely intervention foiled the plan. Little's fury was palpable. He also lamented to police, "I lost my marriage and my son." Decades of being involved in crime had culminated in personal tragedy and a thirst for blood. Both Stephen Little and Edward MacDonald were subsequently brought before the Special Criminal Court, Ireland's non-jury court for organised crime. They pleaded guilty to possession of a firearm with intent. The judge, noting that their arrest prevented another murder, handed down prison terms, 6 years for Stephen, 9 for MacDonald. The streets had been spared one more assassination, at least for that night. Meanwhile, the Garda investigation into the earlier murders continued relentlessly. Breakthroughs came in 2020 and 2021. In the Jordan Davis case, detectives had recovered CCTV footage of the cyclist assassin and traced his movements. They homed in on a suspect, Wayne Cooney, a 31-year-old gunman from Talot. Cooney had been circling Jordan for days before the hit, like a predator stalking prey. At trial, witnesses testified that Cooney was the man in the balaclava who pulled the trigger. In July 2022, a jury found Wayne Cooney guilty of Jordan Davis's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. At sentencing, the judge called Cooney an extremely dangerous individual for carrying out such a callous daylight slaying. Cooney's girlfriend, who had helped him escape and hide after the shooting, was also convicted for assisting an offender. Justice caught up with the bicycle hitman. The Hamid Sanambar murder remained more elusive. Garda suspected from the start that it was Little's associates who killed Hamid, but identifying them took time. Eventually, in 2024, nearly 5 years later, an Irish suspect was arrested in Spain on a European warrant for Sanambar's killing. This man, in his 30s, was nabbed on the Costa del Sol for an unrelated minor incident. Spanish police discovered he was wanted back in Ireland. He's now awaiting extradition for trial. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they are turning even for the triggermen of that payback hit at Sean Little's wake. Mid-2020, the intense cycle of shootings had slowed. Still, violence flared up occasionally. In May 2020, almost 1 year to the date of Little's death, a man in his 30s with ties to the Feud was shot in the legs on Cromcastle Drive, Coolock. He survived, but the attack showed that tit-for-tat strikes were still a threat. Garda patrolled hard, determined not to let another summer of bloodshed erupt. What started as a dispute over drug money evolved into an all-out war on Dublin's north side. Over the course of 2019, the Coolock feud left 5 young men dead and countless others in fear. Friends turned enemies hunted each other through suburban streets. The killings were marked by treachery and brutality. A gangster betrayed by a confidant, a father executed beside his baby's pram, a hitman slain at a wake. These are scenes that sound like something out of a gangland thriller, yet for the residents of Coolock and Darndale, it was a terrifying reality. The feud also laid bare a generational shift in Irish organised crime. Many of those involved were barely in their 20s, foot soldiers of a new breed stepping into a power vacuum left by older crime bosses. As police cracked down on the infamous Hutch-Kinahan feud, which raged in the mid-2010s, a void opened in the drug markets. Ambitious youngsters like Zach Parker and Sean Little rushed to fill it, eager for a slice of the profits and notoriety. They flaunted cash, designer clothes, and fast cars on social media, earning nicknames like the Gucci Gang. But as Assistant Commissioner Pat Leahy warned amid the violence, low-level dealing is enough to have your life taken at a young age. He was right, these lads were playing a high-stakes game, and most didn't live to see 25. Today, the gunfire in Coolock has subsided, but the scars remain. The major players are dead or behind bars. Mr. Flashy, the flamboyant gang boss at the feud's epicenter, remains a free man, though his name is forever tied to the blood spilled in 2019. He and his outfit reportedly moved on to other battles and rivalries in Dublin's Underworld. The neighborhood that was a war zone for a grim few months has returned to a tense normalcy. Families who lost sons, brothers, and fathers are left with only memories and gravesites. Some truth did emerge through court trials. We know who pulled the trigger on Jordan Davis and likely who betrayed Sean Little. But many questions linger. Who exactly ordered each hit? Which murders were officially connected, and which were personal scores settled under the feud's chaos? Was Zach Parker truly set up by his own team, and if so, who gave that order? What deals were made in whispered phone calls and shadowy meetings that we'll never hear about? In the secretive world of Gangland Dublin, the truth remains buried beneath layers of fear and silence. Those who know the full story either won't talk, or they're already in the ground. The Coolock feuds have passed into Dublin crime law, a cautionary tale of betrayal, greed, and vengeance. In just a few violent months, a small pocket of North Dublin saw a cascade of murder. Friends turned foes, alliances shattered, families destroyed. Each killing led to the next in a grim, inexorable chain. And at the heart of it all was a simple, deadly arithmetic of the drug trade. Owe money, pay with your life, lose trust, lose everything. As of today, Coolock's streets are quieter, but the ghosts of 2019 still haunt them. The young men who died, Zach, Sean, Jordan, Ian, have been reduced to headlines and statistics in Ireland's ongoing battle with gang crime. Their associates either met similar fates or carry on elsewhere, looking over their shoulders. The cycle of retaliation has ground to a halt for now, but the underlying conditions remain. The drug business is still lucrative, the players still willing to kill for a cut. In the end, the Coolock feud offers a stark lesson. In this world, loyalty is fragile and life is cheap. A friend one day can be an enemy the next. And as long as that truth holds, the peace is tenuous. For the residents of Coolock, there is relief that the feud's carnage has ended. Yet there's also an uneasy knowledge that in the shadows of Dublin's gangland, another feud could ignite at any time. All it takes is a single spark, a single betrayal. Final lines. In a North Dublin community that still bears the wounds of 2019, the memories of the Coolock feud serve as both a warning and a tragedy. It began with a burning desire for money and ended with burning cars and bleeding streets. The feud consumed itself, leaving behind silence where gunshots once rang. But beneath that silence, the underworld grumbles on. The feud's survivors, the next generation of gangsters, and the fearful neighbors all wonder the same thing. When will the cycle begin anew? Only time will tell, and until then, the full truth of the Coolock feud remains locked away in hardened hearts and unspeaking graves.